What is up, YouTube? It is Tatum. Sunglasses indoors. You know how it is. So I want to do a review of Nic Cage's Arcadian. If you haven't heard of it, well, I'd be surprised if you're watching this review of a movie that you haven't even fucking heard of. But it's a movie starring Nic Cage and Jaeden Martell, who played Bill in It, and Maxwell Jenkins. Don't know what his other work is, but he was decent in the film. Jaden's aged a lot. He looks completely different from how he did in the first It movie, but I guess that was like 7 years ago now. And I hadn't seen him since It 2, which he got de-aged for that, so I hadn't seen him grown up at all in the last 7 years, but he looks like a full-grown man now. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, Arcadian. Nic Cage, directed by Benjamin Brewer, written by, I believe, a guy named Mike Nilton, which I think his only other movie he wrote was some movie with Nic Cage just a couple of years ago. I forget what that was, but I think this is like his second feature. And you can definitely tell because the writing is a little amateurish. But yeah, I'll get into that. It's a horror movie starring those three actors, post-apocalyptic, wasteland, you know. From what I remember from watching, and I think all of America is taken over at this point, and it's been at least a couple decades into the invasion or apocalypse or what have you. But it's very much in the vein of like A Quiet Place, a little bit of Alien, a little bit of Cloverfield, a little bit of that, a little bit of all those. Except it's got Nic Cage in it, right? So that sounds all super exciting, right? But I want to get this right off the bat. I want to say that they really trick you in the marketing, making you think that Nic Cage is in the whole movie, and he really is just in the first half hour and then the last 15 minutes, 20 minutes or so. Now, I wouldn't immediately, boycott the movie just because of that little, advertising manipulation. Every movie does it, and it's a low budget movie, and they need to do everything they can to make the money back and some. So I get that, right? But yeah, you got to go in at least knowing that he is not the lead of this movie. You spend most of it following Jaeden and Maxwell's characters around, which were Thomas and Joseph, I believe. But they hold their own. We already know Jaden's a good actor, and Maxwell does a perfectly good job. So the acting's decent. But yeah, Nic Cage is not in it as much as you would like, but the performance he does have in it, the time that he is on screen, it's Nic Cage. So he's great. He doesn't go crazy Nic Cage, but he does a perfectly fine job with how the character's written and how he portrays that. The movie cons of the movie off rip are the camera work. There are some beautiful things going on with lighting in some scenes, and the look of the landscape. It almost looks, honestly, some shots look like Mad Max, to be honest, of some of the landscapes and the backgrounds. And then sometimes it's way too dark, and in a lot of scenes, it's way too dark, and they decide to show the creature. Now, this film kind of pulls a Godzilla, where you only get looks of the creature, and really anytime you see the creature, you are also wondering something and have a question after you see it, that type of thing. And they don't really show you these things in an all-out carnage, full type of way, until the climax of the film, right? So the times they do show you them, though, and they're in the middle point of the film, it's just too dark and you can't see what the fuck's going on. And a lot of the action scenes, even at the end, are very shaky. And I'm a guy that's kind of good with that stuff. There's only a few movies I know where I couldn't handle the shaky cam, and to be honest, the first Hunger Games is one of them. I don't know if you guys might know what I'm talking about, but the camera is just all over the place. I hate when you're watching a movie where, a lot of the time shit is stabilized and they're clearly on a tripod or some type of, mechanism to keep the camera still. And then sometimes they clearly just have a guy running around on his feet, and it looks like a found footage movie. And either go found footage or go still. I understand wanting to blend certain cinematography types and doing different things with the camera, but you also need to have consistency. And this film didn't have consistency in certain things in terms of lighting and camera work. There was times where I felt like they were purposely just shaking the camera so that you couldn't see correctly, and it leaves you with unanswered questions, but not in a good way. I'm the kind of person where I love when things are left, up in the air, or you have a thinker, you got something to think about, and they don't just give you everything on a silver platter. But sometimes you're kind of just left confused, and it's not satisfying. You can make that satisfying, but they don't necessarily make it satisfying. But I want to get to the good stuff. The way the creatures do look is very cool, and there's a concept here, much like my last video. Even though this movie is nothing like Civil War, it's very similar and in the same boat in the way that they both have a concept that seems very cool and on paper probably seemed really cool. But it didn't get fleshed out all the way. And this movie's only an hour and 25 minutes, if that. So it doesn't have a lot of time to really sink you in and get you scared and then also sit with you, And they try their best to do that in certain scenes. There are scenes in this movie where I really thought shit was about to pick up and that, holy shit, these things are fucking terrifying. They resemble a lot, the creatures in this film, and overall just the vibe and mood of this film is very very Quiet Place-esque, very evocative of Quiet Place, and I think you'll probably hear that a lot, and that this movie's going to get a lot of comparisons to it. Even the creatures kind of look like the Quiet Place creatures. The movie almost feels like a fever dream that someone had years after watching Quiet Place, about Quiet Place. But it is its own thing in a lot of ways too. But it can feel like an amalgamation a lot of the time. It is able to stand on its feet by itself with the help of the performance of Nic Cage and certain things going on with the film, especially with this thing towards the end with how the creatures move as a pack. You could tell they really wanted people to think about these things and think that they were creepy and have nightmares about them. But there's other things they screwed up that doesn't help you get to that place. And there's one thing I need to talk about is the writing. I mentioned it in the very beginning. The writing is very shoddy. And there's a scene in this film, and it's very close to the beginning, where these two characters, Jaeden's character and this girl, I believe is played by Sadie something, I forget, Sadie Sadwell or something like that. They have a scene where they're flirting, whatever. They want to play this game, right? And the game is try to wrap up how the world ended in 10 seconds, and whoever has the more concise explanation for how the world ended wins the game. Now, does that sound like a game to you, or does that sound like exposition? It sounds like exposition to me. And this film's got a lot of issues with stuff like that, and that's where I think Mike Nilton might be, I don't know. I wonder in some spots where, the contribution was more Benjamin Brewer's or Nilton's, in terms of what the characters were doing and saying, and I wonder how that base script looked, because that scene was very, very rough and almost completely brought me out of the film. Because once I heard that, I was like, oh God, it saved itself a little bit from that and where I thought it might go from there. But yeah, if you get motion sickness and you're not into shaky cam, I don't know if this is going to be for you. And if you are going to compare it to Quiet Place the whole time and hope for a movie that's way better than Quiet Place, I don't think this movie is going to be for you either. It's very much for people that just want a nice, creepy horror film. And if you really liked Quiet Place and you really liked Cloverfield and you're itching for stuff like that, this movie will probably scratch that itch. But I think it'll also leave people disappointed as well. I didn't really give a definitive review of Civil War in my last video, but where I think I did mention that I think that movie's like a 6.75. This movie's like a 6.25. They're both in the 6 range. Good concepts that were a little better than I was fearing. You know, they might be in terms of like being bad. So I guess I was a little pleasantly surprised in both cases. But at the same time, once I was starting to be pleasantly surprised, it also didn't go to where I was hoping it would go either. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's my review of Arcadian. I think once it comes out on Shudder and streaming services and stuff like that, if you like horror, watch it. If you like Nicolas Cage, watch it. Why not? Even if he's only in it for about probably 30 minutes total. But if you're already skeptical, maybe just don't. Maybe just skip. But yeah, that's my review of Arcadian, guys. Peace out.